to Talk Fights. I'm Curtis Biggs. Today I'm in Toronto at the CN Tower in the Sky Pod. This is the highest point in the city, the highest point in the country, and once upon a time was the highest point in the world. I want to talk about another fighter that came out of Toronto who was once upon a time the highest in the country and the highest in the world. And that fighter is the champion, Steve Molitor. Steve didn't start out in the big city of Toronto, but rather a few hours away in the small blue-collar city of Sarnia. At the Lambton St. Clair Boxing Club, in the basement of a union hall, a 9-year-old Steve Molitor started his humble beginnings in the pugilistic arts under the tutelage of Silvio Fex. Fast forward a little more than a decade, and that kid is now a man, more or less. He's left Sarnia for Toronto to start a professional boxing career. No longer at Lambton St. Clair, he is now at the Atlas Boxing Club in Toronto under the watchful eye of famed Canadian trainer Adrian Teodorescu. Molitor had been a solid amateur, winning the Canadian Championship several times over the course of his 120 bout amateur career. But with no trip to the Olympics under his belt, he would have to start at the bottom and pay his dues as a fighter before he could expect any sort of substantial return in money or recognition. And he did. In his first professional bout, he traveled to Manitoba and fought Julio Luna. Now, Luna had lost 4 of his last 6, but he was a veteran. He had 29 bouts under his belt and had fought multiple 10 and 12 rounders. This was a wealth of experience to bring to the table, especially when considering he was fighting someone going into their debut. As well, it was scheduled for 8 rounds. For Steve to be fighting an 8-rounder in his professional debut is quite unusual. Most guys start with 4, some start with 6. 8 rounds is pretty unusual. I think that goes to show the amount of confidence that his team had in him. But this was a tough fight for a debut. It would make a statement for Molitor one way or the other. Now, after winning a unanimous, dominant 8-round decision, it did make a statement. This kid is for real. Over the next 2 years, Steve amassed more wins and more respect, going into other men's backyards and punching them out until he earned himself a shot at the Canadian Super Bantamweight title, held by Canadian boxing legend Scotty the Bulldog Olson. Scotty Olson was a hard-hitting volume puncher with an impressive record of 34 wins, 3 losses, and 2 draws. But most impressive was the 25 knockouts to his credit. In a weight class that doesn't see that many knockouts, well, the numbers speak for themselves. In his marquee performance to date, Molitor picked apart Olson, bludgeoning him with straight lefts and hooks, knocking him down several times on his way to a 5th round KO, winning himself the Canadian Super Bantamweight title. Molitor continued to travel into enemy territory, beating people up and gaining momentum, until finally all his hard work had paid off and he earned himself a shot at the Super Bantamweight title of the world. Going into probably the most hostile territory yet, he traveled to England and challenged their undefeated champion in the very capable Michael Hunter. Now, my family is British, my mother's parents are from England, and they're very passionate about their sports, especially their football, and their rugby, and their boxing. But this didn't matter very much to Steve Molitor, who put on a masterful performance, blasting Hunter all over the ring, dropping him with his trademark straight left in the 4th round, and stopping him in the 5th round. Hunter, after being knocked down, though not unconscious, did choose to stay down, either unwilling or unable to get up and take any more of this ferocious punishment being served up by Steve Molitor. Steve walked into the arena a contender and walked out a champion. I can only imagine the feelings of accomplishment and pride that must have washed over him. Thinking back to the scrappy kid bouncing around the streets of Sarnia, to the struggling fighters sleeping at the gym in Toronto, to the top of the world, champion. had the opportunity to meet Steve Molitor a few years ago at an amateur boxing show in Sarnia. I went up and spoke to him briefly about a few of his fights. I found him to be a very friendly, down-to-earth guy. When he was on his way out, I actually kind of chased him out and asked him to get a picture. He was nice enough to pull his belt out of his vehicle and let me get a picture with it. And I was very, very impressed. His career didn't end with winning the belt though. His ability and popularity continued to skyrocket. He gained a residency at Casino-Rama, not far from home, and was able to leave behind the moniker of the Road Warrior and really start to become the Canadian Kid. The second half of his career, which does include my favorite Steve Molitor fight, I will discuss on a future episode of Talk Fights. Before I go, I just want to say what a great city Toronto is. We've really enjoyed being here. We've had a lot of fun. So many great attractions. My fiance and I and our daughter made it up the CN Tower. It was a lot of fun. Made it over to Ripley's Aquarium. It was very, very cool. I liked the jellyfish. And something else kind of neat happened. We got to meet Sidney Crosby. He happened to be staying at the same hotel as us. And when he walked through the lobby, we went over there and introduced ourselves and were able to get a picture. Picture with my wife and my daughter and Sidney Crosby. He again was also very, very friendly. Had a great time in the city and we hope to come back very soon. See you at the fights. Alright. My secret power is fatness. You knew it. Oh, throwing gloves, dirty pool.